Diana Ross is a name known to millions around the world. She's more than just a famous singer. She's an icon, someone who built an empire in music, fashion, and style. From her beginnings with the Supremes to her successful solo career, Diana's voice has touched hearts and inspired generations. Her presence on stage is unmatched, and her confidence off stage is just as powerful. People know her for her stunning voice, her glamorous look, and her undeniable star power. But what most don't know is that Diana is not just a talented entertainer. She's also a woman who's strong, self-assured, and perhaps surprisingly, a force to be reckoned with outside the spotlight. One day, Diana Ross found herself in an unexpected situation. She was walking through a busy street, a place she had visited countless times before. It was a typical afternoon, and the world around her buzzed with the usual sounds of traffic and people chatting. But today was different. A group of bikers with their loud engines and leather jackets caught her attention. They were parked by the sidewalk, their motorcycles lined up in a row, casting long shadows in the fading afternoon sun. The bikers, tough and intimidating, eyed her as she passed. They recognized her instantly, but instead of admiration they saw an opportunity. They had heard the rumors about celebrities being soft, protected by bodyguards and entourages, and they thought she might be an easy target. One of the bikers, a man with a rough demeanor, stepped forward and blocked her path. "Hey Diana," he called out, his voice loud and cocky. "What's it like being a star? Think you're too good to talk to us?" The others laughed, a menacing sound that made the air feel heavier. Diana stopped, her heart calm despite the tension in the air. The bikers, unaware of her strength, continued their taunts, thinking they had the upper hand. Diana stood there, her gaze steady and unfazed by the bikers' jeers. She wasn't frightened. She didn't show fear, even as the group crowded around her. The lead biker smirked, waiting for a reaction, expecting her to shrink away or apologize. But instead Diana just looked at him, her expression calm, almost serene. The bikers, confused by her composed demeanor, tried to push further. "What, you too good to say anything now?" Another biker taunted, leaning in closer. He was much bigger than her, towering over her, but Diana didn't move an inch. "I'm just walking," she said, her voice soft but firm, not a hint of fear in it. "I'm not looking for trouble." Her words were simple, yet there was an undeniable authority behind them. The bikers paused for a moment, uncertain. They were used to celebrities who cowered or played the role of a victim. Diana wasn't doing that. Instead, she stood tall, radiating a quiet strength that none of them could ignore. For a moment the tension in the air grew thick. The bikers exchanged glances, unsure of how to proceed. They had expected her to be someone who would retreat in fear, but Diana wasn't playing by their rules. She didn't flinch, she didn't shout, she just stood there, in complete control, waiting to see if they would back down. The bikers, starting to feel uneasy, took a step back, but they weren't done yet. The bikers couldn't figure her out. They kept trying to push her buttons, but she remained calm. It seemed like nothing would make her react the way they wanted. One of the bikers, sensing that the situation wasn't going their way, stepped forward again, trying to intimidate her further. "All right, sweetheart, you've had your fun," he said with a sneer. "But we're not leaving until you show some respect. You think you can walk away from us without a word?" Diana didn't flinch. She stood still for a second, looking each of them in the eye, her face unreadable. Then with a slight shift in her posture, she said calmly, "I've had enough of this." The bikers exchanged curious glances, still unsure of what she meant. They were used to celebrities who just folded under pressure, but Diana wasn't like that. "I have a black belt in karate," she said, her voice quiet but clear. There was no boastfulness in her tone, just a simple fact. For a moment there was silence. The bikers didn't know how to react. Some laughed, thinking she was joking, while others looked at her, clearly unsure whether to believe it. "You," one of them chuckled. "A black belt." Diana didn't respond with words. Instead she moved her body slightly, adjusting her stance in a way that immediately made it clear she wasn't bluffing. She wasn't trying to show off. She didn't need to, but her confidence in herself was undeniable. The bikers suddenly realized that they might have made a huge mistake. The light-hearted jeering was gone, replaced by an uncertainty that began to settle over the group. The bikers stood frozen for a moment, their eyes locked on Diana. The challenge in her voice had changed everything. They had thought they could intimidate her, push her around, but now they weren't so sure. The leader of the group, trying to regain control of the situation, took a step closer to her. His face hard. "All right," he said, a bit less confident now, "you think you can scare us with a black belt? Let's see what you've got." Diana didn't move, but her posture said it all. She wasn't backing down, she wasn't afraid of them, and she wasn't about to let them take advantage of her. The air between them thickened, charged with the tension of a standoff. The bikers, used to confronting people who would cower, found themselves unsure of how to handle this situation. Diana's calmness unsettled them. They had expected her to show fear, maybe even apologize, but she wasn't doing that. Instead, she was standing her ground, as if daring them to make a move. One of the bikers, not used to this kind of challenge, stepped forward. "You really want to do this?" he asked, his voice growing louder, though it lacked the usual confidence. Diana didn't answer him directly, she simply kept her eyes on him, unblinking. It was clear she wasn't going to start a fight, but she was fully prepared to end it if it came to that. The tension was almost unbearable. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their bravado slowly slipping away. They were used to scaring people into submission, but Diana wasn't reacting the way they expected. It became clear, this wasn't going to end with them walking away as the victors. It wasn't about who could shout the loudest or act the toughest, it was about who had the real strength. And for the first time, the bikers realized that maybe they had underestimated the woman in front of them. The standoff reached a boiling point. The bikers, still unsure of what to do, were now looking at each other with growing doubt. Diana's calmness was beginning to have its effect. They had expected a celebrity to back down, but she wasn't acting like one. She wasn't flustered or afraid, she was steady, confident and ready. Without warning, Diana moved. It was so quick, so smooth, that the bikers barely had time to react. She shifted her weight, fluidly stepping into a fighting stance, her hands ready, her body prepared. The change in her posture was like flipping a switch. The bikers froze for a split second, not sure if they were seeing things, or if she was really about to demonstrate her skills. Diana didn't wait for them to make the next move. With a swift motion, she demonstrated a simple but effective move, her arm extending in a controlled, precise strike. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just pure practice technique. The lead biker, who had been so bold only moments earlier, took a step back, his eyes wide. "Whoa," he muttered, under his breath, his bravado evaporating in an instant. Diana didn't need to say anything. Her actions spoke louder than words. She didn't throw punches, didn't kick wildly. She simply showed them that she could defend herself, and that she knew exactly how to handle herself in a dangerous situation. The bikers were now backing off, their earlier bravado turning to hesitation. They had thought they could intimidate her, but the reality was clear. Diana Ross wasn't just a star. She was a woman who could stand her ground and defend herself, no matter who was in front of her. A tense silence filled the air, as the bikers stood frozen, their bravado quickly fading. The leader, a tall rugged man with a thick beard and a leather vest, narrowed his eyes, still unwilling to admit defeat. His friends, however, weren't as confident anymore. They had just witnessed something they never expected, a poised and elegant celebrity effortlessly demonstrating a level of skill that made them question everything. One of them muttered, "She's messing with us, right?" But the look in Diana's eyes told a different story. There was no fear, no hesitation, only quiet confidence. The leader scoffed, attempting to regain control of the situation. All right, lady. You proved your point." His voice was less sure now, a slight waver breaking through his tough exterior. Diana didn't say a word, she simply straightened up, adjusted her jacket, and gave them a small knowing smile. She wasn't looking for a fight, but she also wasn't about to be pushed around. The bikers exchanged glances, silently debating their next move. One of them, a younger guy with a chain around his neck, finally spoke up. "Man, let's just go. This ain't worth it." The leader exhaled sharply through his nose, clearly frustrated, but unwilling to press his luck. "Yeah, whatever," he muttered. "Didn't wanna mess with you anyway." One by one, the bikers stepped back, their tough guy act crumbling under the weight of their own embarrassment. They had expected an easy target, a scared celebrity who would cower under their intimidation. Instead, they had faced a woman who held her ground with effortless grace. As they mounted their bikes, the younger guy looked at Diana one last time and gave a nod of respect. "Didn't see that coming," he admitted. Diana simply smiled, watching as the bikers revved their engines and disappeared down the street. The moment was over, but the lesson remained: never underestimate the strength of a woman who knows exactly who she is. As the last rumble of the bikers' engines faded into the distance, Diana Ross took a deep breath, letting the tension of the moment dissolve like a passing storm. She wasn't shaken. In fact, she barely spared the incident another thought. This wasn't the first time she had faced adversity with grace, and it wouldn't be the last. Adjusting her coat with effortless elegance, she walked forward as if nothing had happened. A few bystanders, who had witnessed the encounter, still stood frozen, their mouths slightly open in shock. Some had their phones out, capturing the moment, unsure if they had just witnessed a near disaster or the coolest thing they'd ever seen. A woman nearby, who had been clutching her purse nervously, finally found her voice. "Miss Ross, that was incredible." Diana turned to her, and simply smiled. "Sometimes strength is about knowing when to stand your ground," she said, her voice as smooth and composed as ever. The encounter would soon become a whispered legend, an unbelievable but true story of the night. A group of tough bikers learned a lesson in respect from an icon they had foolishly underestimated. As Diana continued with her evening, her steps were as light and graceful as ever. The incident hadn't rattled her, because she had always known who she was. She didn't need to raise her voice, or throw a single punch to prove her strength. It was in her presence, her confidence, and the way she carried herself through life. Meanwhile, somewhere down the road, the bikers rode in silence, still processing what had just happened. The leader, who had been so sure of himself moments before, rubbed his jaw, and let out a short, incredulous laugh. Well, I'll be damned. They wouldn't forget that night. And neither would anyone else who had been there to see Diana Ross remind the world that true strength isn't loud, it's unshakable.